It's the Funny Comics Fan Club.
Hello!
Hello.
Hello!
I thought you were talking to me.
I've already said hello to you. A glimpse behind the curtain. Yes, I've already said hello to John before we started recording.
I got confused. You were saying hello to the virtual audience.
Well, hello to you, John.
Thank you. And hello to you, Mark.
Thank you. And you're listening to the Funny Comics Fan Club.
Yes, indeed you are.
And what are we looking at this week then, John?
Well, this was your idea.
Okay, I see.
Yes, we're shifting the blame straight away. This week we are looking at Marvel Madhouse.
Marvel Madhouse.
Number 1.
Abandon hope all ye who enter it says on the front cover. It's a collector's edition as well, it says.
Number 1.
A collector's edition.
Collector's item, face it. There may not be another one, it says.
Yeah, there weren't many. There weren't many.
There weren't many.
And it's
You're
true.
right.
It's true because it says 35p on the front cover. And you know, like some 30 or 40 years later, it cost me £1 to buy this on eBay. So that was an investment somebody made there.
I mean, at the time, this was like quite an expensive comic or magazine or whatever you want to call it. Comic, isn't it?
It's a comic, yeah. I mean, so this is published by Marvel UK, as you could probably guess from the title. It was a Marvel comic. But it's this Marvel UK comic.
Marvel Yuck.
And this is at the start of quite an exciting and interesting period for Marvel UK.
June 1981, a Marvel monthly, Marvel Madhouse, is it? Yeah.
So may I give a little context? Is that okay? I know
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
early
yeah,
on in the
yeah.
podcast, but I think
Give
it's
some
good.
context because nobody's ever heard of this. So off
No,
you go.
I know. Well, I remember buying this. I remember buying this at the time. 'cause
You bought it? What, in your local newsagent?
in my local newsagent.
It's funny, isn't it, what you find, what you used to find in your local newsagent. You know, I used to go to stay with my gran over the summer holiday, and it was in St Albans, and there was a newsagent there, and that's where I got Captain Carrot and his amazing zoo crew in 1980. You know, why? There was only ever one every month, and I got it because nobody else knew it was there. Strange thing for a newsagent to keep in St Albans.
I don't think they had any choice in which. So the American comics, when those came in, I don't think the news agents were going, "Oh, I'd really like to have an issue of Captain Carrot, and if possible, Amazing Man or whatever." They would say, "Oh, I would like the following number of American comics," and then they just get a batch of them. I mean, they would say to the distributors, "I'd like this many Beanos, this many Dandies, whatever." But the American comics, when they were just coming up, I don't think this was the case then, but they used to be used as bases ballast on ships, and that's when they first came in. But then around this period, it was like you would just order a batch of American comics, and that's what you get.
Yeah, so there was no, it was difficult to find every issue of something.
It was pretty much impossible.
Which
was pretty much the case in America as well. So in America, you would have to go around lots of different mom and pop stores to find the specific issue. And it was even worse here because they just wouldn't order the same things. But that's why comics from then, they would always have a bit right at the start of the comic where the characters would tell each other what happened last time. They'd always give because the idea was any comic could be anybody's first comic. It was impossible to get a complete run. So they'd always tell you what had happened. In the 60s and 70s, Marvel did have continuing stories, but they'd always make sure you knew. And it wasn't until like the 80s in America when the direct market started to happen, comic stores opened, then you'd be able to go in and reliably get the same series every single month.
You know what was confused me? I can see that, but you know what confused me was superhero strips in daily newspapers. There was no context for it. What is this?
Yes.
This is strip number 48 of some really complicated story. You couldn't really tell what was going on from that. There's no way.
Well, it's all adventure strips because Garth and James Bond and all those strips. I mean, when you read them put together, it's like, well, the first panel is basically, well, here's kind of where we are now. The last panel is always, oh, here's a cliffhanger. So you've only got one panel in the middle. There'll be any story whatsoever. And they're just like impenetrable. And it's like the bit that says, here's what's happened. It goes, yes, Olga, the clone duplicate spy from Venus. And you're going, well, that doesn't really help.
Yeah.
Does it, Garth? I don't really know what's
It's
going on
weird,
there.
isn't it? I suppose the newspapers just must have looked at the popularity of Spider-Man and just said, yeah, do that.
Well, they'd always had, Prince Valiant and things. There have been
And Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon, yeah, good point, yeah. Since they've always been there.
I guess so, yeah, Yeah.
And I suppose people just collect them all together and then go, well, I've got all these, I am following the story.
But then, like in the Sunday papers and things like that, you'd have like much more. You'd have a big page of it, wouldn't you? It was almost like a comic.
In America, you have the funnies pages, which is a supplement in the weekend papers, which is all comics. And so the comics that we know and love, or don't love, these days, they're based on the American funnies.
I think we did that for a little bit in some of the newspapers in the UK, but I don't think it lasted very long, even though I remember thinking this is brilliant.
Because the Mail on Sunday used to do it, didn't I? I remember the Mail when they had the You magazine, the first.
That's right.
Yeah.
I loved that. That was the first thing I went to, and probably the last thing.
Yeah.
But let's look at this Marvel Madhouse. You were going to set some context.
Yeah, so this came out in the early 80s, and what was happening at Marvel UK then? So Des Skin, who we all know of, who was a big editor, he edited Starburst, he went on to do Warrior and things like that. And he just left, and somebody called Bernie J came in as editor. And she started this period of basically trying lots of stuff out. And they were kind of trying to do Marvel comics that copied British comics.
Is that things like Super Spider-Man?
Well, it wasn't that, because they'd always done like Mighty World of Marvel and Hulk Weekly and Spider-Man comics. They'd always done superhero comics. But then they did a comic called Fury, which was war stories. So they're trying to do like Valiant and Battle. They did one called Future Tense, which is a science fiction story. So they're trying to do things like 2000 AD. So they're trying out lots of different ideas to like go, well, they've got the superhero market. Can they expand any further into anything else? And so I think this, Marvel Madhouse, is their attempt to go, okay, well, let's try and do a humour comic. But the kind of humour comic they're doing isn't so much a kid's humour comic. This is more like something like Mad.
So before, in a previous episode of this podcast, you were saying that you thought Crazy Comic was quite similar to Mad. Although I wasn't sure about that. But this thing is definitely trying to be Mad Magazine.
Yes.
To me.
Yes.
I mean, I'd like to do an episode on Mad Magazine at some point in the future, just because I can't really remember much about it. I think I might have bought a couple of them, but I think I remember them being too expensive for me or something as a kid, and they weren't really aimed at my age group, so I think that my parents weren't particularly happy with me getting Mad Magazine. I don't think I ever got it, actually. I think it was just too expensive and it wasn't in my local newsagent or something, but it'd be interesting to look at it because it was regarded, I think, pretty highly at the time. It'd be interesting to have a look at it and see what it's like compared to this thing.
Yeah, because I do vaguely remember somebody else having it and looking at it. I just didn't understand most of it. Because as we discussed before, I grew up in Peterborough, where we didn't have a lot of American... There was lots of American imports on telly, like Magnum or whatever. And obviously we got farming programmes instead, so we didn't get any of them, as I may have mentioned to you in the past. But then Mad Magazine...
Yeah, we're going to look at Farming Week soon, aren't we?
But that was fairly impenetrable, whereas this, Marvel Madhouse, is almost completely impenetrable, isn't it? It's like, who knows what's going on?
Well, we're going to put this on the socials, aren't we? Some of this.
Some of it, yeah.
So what it is, it's a parody of Marvel superheroes, really. That's what this is. But the thing is, it wasn't done specially for the UK in terms of... Half of the material wasn't done specially for the UK.
No.
This is all reprints of an American comic at the time. Or actually, not at the time.
Exactly, yeah. So this is a reprint of a series called Not Brand X, which was a terrible joke about Brand X, but it was spelled X.
So what was that?
And that was this. It was... Not Brand X was a series from 1967, ran from 1967 to 1968.
Mm-hmm.
And it did... every issue had lots of stories in it that were parodies of Marvel comics, done by Marvel Comics.
Yeah, done by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee.
Well, that's it. Sometimes the strips they're parodying, they would do... there's one issue where they do a parody of a issue of Fantastic Four. And it's basically a straight redo of the issue with jokes added, done by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, who did the original issue. So it's weird.
So there was therefore there were no copyright issues.
There were no copyright issues, no.
I remember seeing a Spider-Man parody in the back of a Spider-Man Treasury that I have a feeling must have come from Not Brand X.
Yeah, it would have done, yeah.
Which I remember thinking at the time was hilarious, but God knows what I think of it now, especially after reading Marvel Madhouse, number one.
But it's weird because they go, we're going to do so. This is a comic for the kids, it's a human comic. And this whole thing is 14 years old. So it depends on a knowledge of American culture from 14 years ago, mostly expressed in terms of very, very specific Marvel comics, including one called Two Gun Kid, which never ever came out in this country.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like if you're going to do a parody, especially if you're a kid, you need to know what the parody is of. So just to make it clear for readers, listeners and readers at home, Marvel Madhouse came out in 1981, and most of it is a reprint of Not Brand Echh from around the late 60s.
1967, 68, yeah.
So that is, what a peculiar decision. So this didn't last very long, you say?
It lasted for 8 issues.
Why they did it at all is peculiar to me.
And it merged with another comic called Frantic,
which was a sort of Mad rip-off.
Yeah,
Mad Magazine
yeah,
rip-off.
exactly.
There were loads of Mad Magazine rip-offs.
Yeah, it was similar to like when Viz came out, wasn't it? And suddenly there was all these different Viz rip-offs, none of which was good, yeah.
So, Marvel Madhouse, the contents page, you've got page 4, Earth 33 and a third. Then you've got page 7, Charlie America. Page 15, The Mighty Saw. Page 23, The Inedible Bulk. Page 31, The Two-Gun Kid.
This contents page is a reprint from Not Brand. So this most of this is reprinted from Not Brand Echh number 4.
Although they must have put in this 33 and a third.
And they changed. They put some extra bit, changed around a bit the credits page. But this is a reprint of that. You'll notice here that it doesn't include the Two Gun Kid parody in the pictures of it, because the Two Gun Kid wasn't in that issue of Not Brand Echh. That was taken from another one. But if you go and if you look at Charlie America first.
So Charlie America is a parody of Captain America. So first of all, there's nothing funny about the name Charlie America.
No.
What's that? Is that a joke, is it?
I always think with these, growing up reading these things, you thought, is this some kind of New York joke? They go, hey Charlie, come here Charlie, hey Charlie, and then maybe that was a thing.
Because it doesn't, the Mighty Thor sounds a bit like the Mighty Saw.
Yeah.
The Inedible Bulk, we know what that is.
Yeah.
Charlie America doesn't sound like Captain America. I mean, half of this stuff is sort of not very good puns.
Yes, indeed.
And Charlie America isn't even a pun, it's just a name. The origin of Charlie America.
Yeah, and the origin of Charlie America here is basically exactly the same as the origin of Captain America. Just read it. But what they do is they change some of the names in a fairly terrible way and stick loads of stuff in the background. So to start with, what's happening is Charlie America is talking to not Nick Fury. Get ready to laugh.
Ready?
Knock Fury, Knock. Knock Fury.
Yeah.
That's the standard of hilarity here. The characters in the background, there's lots of Marvel characters in the background here, but as you go through it, I think Wonder Woman's in there. We go. So Wonder Woman shows up in the background. Dick Tracy's in the background of some of them. You get the Peanuts gang here in this one. So there's lots and lots of stuff going on in the background.
Who did the art for this? So Stanley sort of wrote a lot of this. Roy Thomas wrote some. Tom Sutton's the artist.
Tom Sutton's the artist. So it says blame Stanley. Stanley's name is there first. Stanley was the editor.
He's the editor.
I think there's the Mighty Saw stories in this. Stanley did write, but he was the editor of the original Not Brand Echh comic.
It's not like when you've got some of the comics we've read before, the DC or the IPC ones, where you've got someone like, my favourite, Jack Edward Oliver, who's got funny details in the background, but you can see what's going on in the picture. In this, there's so much going on, it's very hard to work out what the hell it is.
Yeah.
And you don't really want to, I didn't particularly want to look at all the detail.
So much, isn't it? I think
look at that. I was just going to mention that. In the background of one of these panels, you've got the thing reading Brand Echh.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have made no sense to someone in the UK reading this comic.
That's true.
Most of it.
But none of it doesn't make any sense, does it? I mean,
in this context.
The humour, such that it is supposed to come from the idea that you recognise what the origin of Captain America was and how they're taking the mickey out of it. And then what they're doing is so the Peanuts gang appear in the background for no apparent reason. Dick Tracy's in there, isn't he? But yeah, who knows why? Why are we being given this? It just makes no sense.
Was the original in colour, or was that also black and white like this?
This was in colour, yeah.
So maybe that might help. If it was in colour, maybe that might help you work out what's going on. But just in straight black and white, you can barely discern half of the details in each panel. It's just you don't know what you're looking at. When you're looking at the Beano or the Dandy, your eye knows where to go. It's quite easy to follow the story and the pattern. Here, you don't know what's happening from one thing to the next.
But I think this is the style of Mad comic, isn't it? The idea we're just
that's why I'd like to look at Mad.
Yeah,
I'd like to look at Mad to see if that we have that same reaction. Because I remember Mad magazine having absolutely tons of dialogue. This has got tons of dialogue in it. And literally, I mean, in this panel you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different speech balloons.
Yeah.
And the thing is, half of the things they're making jokes about, or attempting to make jokes about, we don't know what they are. We don't know what they're referring to, so we can't get the joke.
They're in America. They're from 14 years ago at this point. They're from a different country altogether, where you don't have the same cross-pollination of media as we do now, and they're about very specific stories that would have come out once before. I mean, if we look at the next one, for instance, which is The Mighty Saw. Now, this is written by Stan Lee and drawn by Jack Kirby, the same people who were writing and drawing Thor at the time. And this is not in the Mad style. This is kind of an even more exaggerated Jack Kirby style. So there were lovely things. I mean, I think this is the one that looks best of all of them to me, because it is very Jack Kirby. It is very clear. But did you understand what on earth was going on with this one?
Well, I think I've read this about 4 times, and I sort of vaguely half understood it by the 4th read. But I mean, some of the artwork is sort of great. And look at that gun. I mean, there's this massively detailed Jack Kirby gun, and they refer to it. They say, that Kirby-esque cannon cannot harm me.
Indeed, don't they?
So it's quite nice that they've got these little in-jokes.
And there's a name for that. That's called Kirby Tech.
Oh.
So we'll definitely put this page on the socials. But stuff like that is called Kirby Tech, like really complicated machinery that you go, I've no idea how this is supposed to work at all. It's amazing stuff. Jack Kirby's doing slightly exaggerated Jack Kirby. That's slightly exaggerated Kirby Tech. The dialogue is only very slightly exaggerated versions of Stan Lee dialogue as well. So I think this is my favourite one of the lot, because it does actually sort of work, and it's not trying to do too much in it.
Yeah, there's a really interesting panel. Where are they going here? Because this is where I couldn't. He's gone to some weird planet or other. Where is it? Some Viking realm or something.
So he's gone. Let me just go. So what's happening is they take the Rainbow Bridge to Asgard.
So they go to Asgard, and then you've got this picture. It'd be good if this is on the socials, because you've got the monkeys trying to attempt to get into this peculiar realm.
Yeah,
they turn up. You've got that bloke from Mad Magazine,
Alfred E. Newman.
Alfred E. Newman's there.
Martin Luther King's there.
All in this one
Muhammad
panel.
Ali's there. Dr. Doom's there. So this is what I was saying. This story was in my PhD thesis.
Because your PhD thesis is about Dr. Doom.
Exactly, and there's Dr. Doom stuck in the middle there for no good reason apart from fun.
So yeah, this is obviously an interesting panel. I mean, I couldn't quite work out what was going on, which held it back for me. But again, then you've got some more Kirby Tech. Did you say it was here?
I love you. Say it again, Kirby Tech. Let's all say
where you've got Seymour the Sorcerer. Seymour the Sorcerer. Open all hours reference there, and he's come in and he's attacking Schmodin or Odin.
Yes,
and it looks...
I think you're missing the hilarious joke there, John. His name's Odin, but they call him Schmodin. That's the hilarity.
Yeah. I was laughing inwardly. But the sorcerer bloke's got this what looks like a huge laser cannon, futuristic type thing, and it turns out it's a coffee machine. So I like that joke. So yeah, there are some laughs to be had here, even though I didn't really understand the story, because I'm not massively au fait with the origin of Thor.
No, exactly. So you wouldn't get it, would you?
So I don't quite get the origin of Saw.
And also, I mean, this came out in 1981 when you and I would have been about 11. And there's pictures of people, like the crowd scene, there's people there who are long dead.
Yeah.
Long dead.
I mean, the thing is, maybe I liked that Spider-Man parody because it was in a Spider-Man treasury. You know, I would have just read a Spidey story.
Yes.
And then at the back, you've got something parodying the whole thing. So that makes perfect sense in that context.
But here,
we don't know where we are.
We have no idea what's going on.
Star Wars watches for boys and girls, complete with an attractive gift pouch. An official Star Wars product. Only $8.95, including VAT and postage and packing.
The time!
The hours, minutes and seconds, date and month are clearly visible in a digital display.
A must!
For every Star Wars fan.
Quartz accuracy.
Advanced microcomputer circuitry and liquid crystal technology make this watch capable of astonishing accuracy.
Automatic perpetual calendar.
Your official Star Wars watch knows the days in each month and adjusts itself at the end of the month, don't we all?
Fully adjustable straps.
The straps adjust to fit all ages.
How to order?
Oh yeah. Please fill in the order coupon and allow 28 days for delivery, the classic. If sending cash, please send by registered post only.
Then we get to like this. The next one is called The Origin of Brucey Banter.
So this was my favourite one.
Right, okay.
Which is the inedible Bulk. And he's saying silly things like, why everyone run from Bulk? Maybe Bulk forgot to use heads and shoulders this week. So I thought that was a good joke. But then other jokes, you don't know what the hell they're talking about. Like, why is there a rat screaming into a grill, Vive la France? I don't know.
I have no idea. It must have meant something at the time.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Because you think, well, there's all this detail in the background. There's no point to most of it that I can see. But there must have been some reason at the time.
You just throw in enough stuff and some of it will be funny.
That's what they thought. But I don't know, I think it actually detracts from the story and what's going on.
So this is drawn by Marie Severin, who was the first woman drawing, I think she was, the first woman drawing for Marvel Comics. And I think she does a lovely job. The way she draws the Hulk in this is like a big toddler, isn't it? The facial expressions look great.
And whenever he's walking down the street, he leaves big sort of indentations in the pavement, which I like.
So that it looks great, doesn't it? It looks really nice, but again, no idea what on earth's supposed to be going on.
Yeah, it's so complicated, and I can't see how a kid would have understood much of this.
Yeah, this bit that got me was Rick Jones, who's quite an important character in the origin of the Hulk, appears here as a jive-talking hipster, which makes no sense.
I mean, this whole bit lost me completely.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. This parody does not work.
Well, if you know...
Maybe.
If you really know what's going on, then it doesn't work then.
Yeah. Because, I sort of vaguely know the origins of the Hulk. And this doesn't really work for me at all. He's doing some sort of... He's got to solve the air pollution problem, but he does it by... He's going to drive a garbage truck into a dump or something and it's going to blow up. It doesn't make any sense.
So, yeah,
it's not worth analysing that whole plot.
That's all vaguely to do with the origin of the Hulk. But then, that's all well and good. But at least with the previous ones, we've heard of Captain America, Thor and the Inedible Bulk. But the last reprint, Two Gun Kid, is a parody of the Two Gun Kid comic from the 1950s, early 60s that never came to the UK.
Was this printed in Marvel at the time?
Yeah. When the cowboy comics were in fashion, Marvel's predecessor company Timely published loads and loads of cowboy comics to cash in. And they were still, I think, published some of them in the 60s.
And this is one of them, isn't
it? So the Two Gun Kid, Kid Colt, people like that, the original Ghost Rider were some of those characters. Never really reprinted here, certainly not by Marvel UK.
Because at the start of this story, it says, scintillating scoop. I mean, these little bits, I think, they're pretty much got to be Stan Lee, haven't they? Because they've got all this sort of annoying alliteration.
They're in the Stan Lee style, right? I say.
Annoying alliteration is in itself an annoying alliteration. But it says here, scintillating scoop. Mighty Marvel has done it again. I mean, in the previous stories, they're referred to as Marble for a start, so there's this continuity out. Mighty Marvel has done it again. Who else but your batty bullpen would dare to lampoon a story that hasn't even appeared yet? So they're making reference to the fact that maybe it hasn't even appeared in America yet.
Although it will have appeared 13 to 14 years ago by this point when they reprinted it, yeah.
I don't know. Why they did this, I don't know.
Well, I think the reason they did it was because they will have had 4 pages to fill in the comic, and this strip is 4 pages long. I would guess that's probably the reason this one was chosen.
What a shame. Weren't there any others they could have used?
Well, the thing is, I've read quite a lot of Not Brown Deck because Doctor Doom appears in them. Oh, get ready to laugh again. Not Doctor Doom, he's called Doctor Bloom in these comics.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've read quite a lot of them, and they're pretty much all terrible. They're basically all terrible comics. So goodness knows why anybody would think that. But the lovely thing the thing I really like about them though is that these characters all came back in a series called Next Wave Agents of Hate about 10 years ago, maybe longer ago. And then all these characters came back from an alternative universe where they actually exist as superheroes, and there's a character called Forbush Man.
What is this? So this Forbush person is referenced all the way through Marvel Madhouse. So what is that? A funny character that never appeared?
No, Irving Forbush is a character who, in early Marvel editorials, that was the name of a fictional character who they would blame things on. I don't know why he's called Irving. I assume there's some amusing thing from the early 60s with people called Irving Forbush. Who knows?
Okay.
And then he becomes a superhero and he pulls on some red a red thermal vest. He wears a red thermal vest, and on his head, instead of a mask, he has a pan that's stuck on his head with his eyes cut out.
So he's a superhero of some sort. Appearing in what? Not Brand X?
Not Brand X, yeah. So he has no superpowers of his own, but he is sort of, and then he appears as sort of a joke character in editorials and stuff going through. At no point is it in any way amusing.
And it would have made no sense to any kid reading this in 1981.
Absolutely not.
So this blooming Two Gone Kid 4-page cowboy feature, I mean, that, I don't know, it's just I didn't really like it, I have to be honest with you. I didn't understand it once again, because I don't know the original thing that they're making fun of.
No. I mean, if it's any help, some of these strips, I do know the original thing that they're making fun of. I'm not getting any more out of it than you are. You're not missing much.
Well, it's like, as I say, I knew the origin of the Hulk, and that has had hardly any sort of didn't really help. Didn't really help. No. But then, so you want to end with the thing that's at the beginning, because that's the only strip that's, I presume, nothing to do with this reprint of Not Brand X.
Yeah. So the whole thing is reprints, and it's all American, and it's all really, really out of date. Apart from the first 3-page strip, which is called Earth 33 1/3, the motion picture, by Tim Quinn and Dickie Howlett.
So I'm familiar with Dickie Howlett from, it might be Whoopi or certainly other comics that we've looked at.
Yeah, so Tim Quinn and Dickie Howlett worked together. So I think Tim Quinn would have written, we looked at Superman, wasn't it, that we saw in Whoopi. And I think the lovely thing is they worked on Whoopi together, and there is an issue of Whoopi in one of the panels, isn't it? So that's quite nice.
So what is Earth 33 1/3 a parody of?
Well, it's not a parody of anything in particular. But what it used to be was Tim Quinn and Dickie Howlett used to do quite a lot of like 3-panel strips in Marvel UK comics. So like on the letters page or the editorial page, whatever, there'd be a little strip that they drawn there. And they also used to do a strip called Dr. Watt in Doctor Who Monthly as well. So they did quite a lot of these, and they were like little joke strips, taking the mickey out of them or making topical British jokes. They're both British, so they were both British jokes about stuff that was going on, really, or just little funnies. So Earth 33 1/3 is kind of the joke idea of, well, all of these stories take place on Earth 33 1/3, 33 1/3 being the speed of a long-playing record, obviously, and that's the gag there. So they'd have all this, but this is not Brand X stuff. Double negative, so it is Brand X. There you go. So the characters aren't called Charlie America or whatever in this, are they?
So this was, would you think this was drawn and written specifically for Marvel Madhouse?
Yeah.
Ah, okay, right. And so some of it is like a parody of Superman, some of it is a bit of a parody of Batman. It's all thrown in there. And it's nicely drawn, and there's a lot of silly things going on. It's a little bit on the violent side, isn't it? I mean, there's one point where whoever the lead character is, Norman is his name. He looks on while his parents are shot by some nasty man. So that's obviously a parody of Batman. But after that, he says, "I've never been that struck on my foster folks anyhow, thanks."
Yeah.
So
did this tragedy change his life forevermore? Not really.
He was quite pleased about it.
Yeah.
So that is, nowadays I don't think you'd do that sort of joke.
You probably wouldn't do that sort of joke. But the joke of it is that he lives in a world full of superheroes and he's the only normal person.
Yeah, so that's a reasonable sort of idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's a joke that's been done many times since. There's an actually pretty good show, I think it's on Disney Plus, called Extraordinary, in which the joke is the main character is the only person who doesn't have superpowers.
Well, that's like Monty Python's Bicycle Repairman sketch.
Yes, it is.
That was the first time I saw that, and that is done really well.
Yeah.
But this isn't a bad little strip, although I don't know whether I'd want to read any more of them, to be honest with you.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? I'm not sure if they put it at the start. So maybe I thought, well, maybe if they put it at the end, it would seem even better, because you would get so awfully depressed by all the other rubbish that's in it. This would come as a breath of fresh air. But then maybe nobody ever gets to the end unless they have to, because they're recording a podcast about it.
But the whole concept of this Marvel Madhouse was just like rubbish.
Oh, it's awful, isn't it?
I mean, maybe if they commissioned some new, parodies of superhero strips by current British cartoonists, it might have been really good. Yeah, if they'd had I don't know, Dennis Gifford do a parody of Spider-Man or something. I don't know.
Well, the thing is, Bernie J, who was the editor of this, I mean, she was basically just flinging out lots of ideas. And one of the ideas that was a comic called, I think the first one was called Daredevil, The Daredevils. And in the Daredevil, she did commission some British artists to do things. Actually, it was first of all, it was in a comic called, first of all, it was Marvel Superheroes, I think. But then the Daredevils, she commissioned some British people to do stuff. One of those people was a bloke called Alan Moore, who she commissioned to write several articles. He also did several strips. One of them was Captain Britain.
He did. Oh, hold on. Who did Captain Britain?
Well, it was originally done by Dave Thorpe and Alan Davis in Marvel Superheroes comic. This is I'm going to say the new version, but so Captain Britain was originally in Captain Britain comic in the mid-70s, written by Chris Claremont.
I mean, I loved that. I mean, that seems to get a bad rap now, but I loved that at the time. I still really love it.
Maybe we'll have a look at that in the future.
Maybe, yeah.
Because I don't think you'll like it now.
Oh, okay.
But then that was sort of revamped by a chap called Dave Thorpe and Alan Davis, who's a massively famous comics artist now because he's great. And then Alan Moore took it over in the Daredevils, and it became one of my favourite runs of any superhero story ever, really. So, we're saying this is rubbish, and it is rubbish, but they were trying out lots and lots of different things. A lot of them didn't work, but then this was kind of a golden age for Marvel UK produced stuff because it brought us Alan Moore into all the superheroes, really, doing this sort of thing.
So and how many issues did you say there were of Marvel Madhouse?
8.
Okay.
Or to put it another way, 8 too many.
8. So that was almost a whole year of this.
Yes, 8 long months.
Just everything about it is just not well put together. Is the cover from Not Branded?
Yeah.
It is. The cover is not funny. I mean, there's nothing funny going on in the cover.
No.
If you're going to do a parody, you'd think it would be funny. The cover's got to be pretty funny to make people read it, and clearly nobody did read it.
But I think with this, I'd like to draw a distinction, because we didn't like it, but I don't think it's doing any harm. I think there have been other comics that we've disliked.
Right.
I'm particularly thinking when we did the Dandy, and that made me angry because it was just like, going, no, what are you doing?
Well, this thing here, I mean, if you hadn't asked me to review this with you on our show, I would have got halfway through this and just stopped reading it.
Indeed.
To me, it is unreadable.
My apologies to you.
But it was worth having a look, because when you gave it to me, I thought, this looks amazing. I had these images of this old Spider-Man parody, so I thought this whole thing's going to be hilarious. I really like Superman parodies and parodies of other heroes. I really like that concept. I've always liked it. But here, generally, it's just there's too much going on for it to be enjoyable.
So can you pick two strips you liked, or even one?
Well, I think I've always really liked the Hulk, actually, so I quite like the parody of the Hulk in this. But the rest of it left me very, very angry. Not angry, really. No, just deflated.
No, just disappointed.
Just disappointed with life in general.
Yeah, I think the Inedible Ball was the best of the bunch for.
I mean, I preferred Russ Abbott's Madhouse to this. I preferred Freddie Starr's Madhouse.
Oh, goodness me!
He gets a lot of mentions in the podcast. I don't know what's going on, but overall, I'm looking forward to the next issue.
Yeah.
Not the next issue of this. The next comic that we cover.
Oh, sorry, listeners. I'm putting away Marvel Madhouse #2. Not so much of a collector's issue.
Marvel Madhouse.
And instead, I'll give you the next comic we're looking at, which is Knockout comic.
This looks cool. My goodness me. Knockout, 2.5p. That's more like it. I can afford that.
We've not had a half p in our pricing as yet, have we?
No, we've had old pennies. We've had old money. Pennies. I know you come from old money. But this looks fun to me. Knockout. And it's all colour. Look at that. All colour. Can you believe it?
Let's see if we believe it when we look at it. But that's the next time. So I think all that remains to say is thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Sorry to John for putting you through that.
No problem, but I will never look at that ever again. I can't believe I read it 4 times. Gordon Bennett. The things we do for this podcast.
Incredible.
But yeah, Knockout's going to be great. Anyway, until the next time, it's good night from me.
And like and subscribe from me.
Good. See ya.
Bye.